I was asked a question the other day, and it actually comes my way pretty often, and it's usually by the betrayed spouse. And the question is it okay if my unfaithful spouse is in charge of what our recovery looks like? Oftentimes, the betrayed spouse, in certain types of situations, will feel like the unfaithful is taking charge and they are laying out a recovery plan, and this is what they are going to do, and this is what you, the betrayed spouse, are going to do. And I want to tell you it's extremely problematic. I tried to do the same thing with Samantha, so I understand the mindset behind it. I understand the heart behind it extremely well. But it is a really big mistake to allow the unfaithful spouse to dictate what recovery should look like. So I'm going to lay out a few reasons why, and then I'll give you a big answer at the end that actually kind of sums it all up, but reverts back to kind of the granular reasonings that I'm going to give you. Number one is the unfaithful spouse had the affair. The unfaithful spouse wasn't seeing clearly when they were justifying the affair, living in secrecy, living a double life. And to think that they are going to snap out of it and see incredibly clearly now, even though they may be saying that, is just unrealistic. The fact is that we, as unfaithful spouses, have affairs. To think that we can just kind of flip the switch, which I spoke about in one of my last video blogs, and that we can just kind of come into this cosmic awareness that's like, oh, I am all of a sudden seeing so much more clearly. I'm so relieved that it's over, and now I know what we should be doing. I'm sorry, surgeons don't operate on themselves. They find a surgeon that they trust, that they know personally, and they have work done. Well, if you're an unfaithful spouse trying to tell your betrayed spouse that you know what you guys need to heal, I'm sorry, it's very jaded. You are not seeing objectively, and you don't even have the knowledge to help your spouse heal. You don't know what they need. You don't even probably know what you need. So to think that you are going to be able to radically shift on the fly and assume control of the ship, I'm sorry, don't do it. It's a mistake I tried because I was so prideful. I was such a control freak. I was in such charge of this big, ministry and all these things that I figured, we can do this. I know what we need. It's a colossal mistake. It's particularly a mistake because you don't have objectivity, nor does your spouse. He or she doesn't have objectivity. They're hurt. They're betrayed. But as an unfaithful, to think that you have an objective viewpoint to dictate how recovery is going to go, I'm sorry, you just don't. Take it from me. Another reason why the unfaithful spouse shouldn't be in charge of what recovery looks like is because we as unfaithfuls, in probably at least 90-some-odd% of the time early on, we're dealing with shame. We are embarrassed, humiliated, we hate what we've done, but we don't want to talk about it. We want to kind of admit to it, confess it, and then not have to talk about it. And so we become very subjective and very jaded, and so we want to kind of point every conversation and every exercise or everything that we do away from us having to talk about our shame and how embarrassed and how humiliated we are. And so it becomes very subjective because now we're not giving the betrayed spouse the right time or message or opportunity to heal because we don't want to talk about it. We are managing our shame. We are making recovery about us when we are managing our shame, not about our spouse. The worst thing that we could do is do what I did, which is early on, be so enamored with my own feelings and my own embarrassment, and I'm such a failure and self-loathing. Well, you know what? I am taking the focus on me rather than putting the focus on my betrayed spouse to help them heal and understand and cope and deal with the trauma of my choices. This one's going to hurt, but the next one is you're not the answer. I know that that's kind of a kick in the teeth, but you don't know what you need. You don't know what your spouse needs. They don't even know. what they need as a betrayed spouse. They have an idea that they need safety and comfort and some time and some general things. But in terms of the specificity of what healing from infidelity requires, they don't know. And you're not the answer. You don't have the solutions. The best thing that you can do is say, you know what? I don't have the answers. Let's go find someone that does. Let's go and trust our healing to people who, and I'm going to say this really honestly and openly, that are not shysters, that are not trying to take advantage of your crisis to earn money and rake you over the coals, that are not trying to just manipulate you for finances, that are not trying to just be a buddy or be a friend or the armchair counselor, but let's go find someone who's got 15 to 30 some odd years of experience, who's been through it themselves, who's treated more than a couple of cases of infidelity, who has not just read a few books on it, but has actually been through it, lived to tell about it, and isn't jaded, because I will tell you, I talk to people every week who deal with counselors, and unfortunately, some of them, certainly not all, and I don't believe that most, but there are some that are very jaded. They were betrayed, and so they kind of push people in certain directions, or they were unfaithful, so they kind of push people in different directions. It's just truth. It happened with us at one point. It can happen if you don't deal with an expert, but admit that you are not the answer. Write a check, sell something, apply for a scholarship at afairrecovery.com, but find expert help so that you don't have to be the bad guy. Because there's something marvelous about letting a third party who's an expert say some things to your spouse that they can't hear from you. And it's even wonderfully redemptive and freeing to have a therapist say some things to you that you can't hear from your spouse, but you know that it's truth. Finally, Rick says this all the time. You can't solve a problem with the same mindset or the same consciousness that created the problem in the first place. You just can't. There's a problem, there's dysfunction within the marriage, there's dysfunction within the unfaithful spouse, along with, sure, deception and justification. I get it. But to think that you can go from that consciousness to solving the problem of infidelity in your marriage or relationship when it was the consciousness that was going on, it was the approach, the mindset, what have you, that was happening in the first place, which allowed for the infidelity, that consciousness isn't going to fix it or heal it or save it. And you may say, because I can hear your retort, unfaithful, if you are as self-righteous as I was, I can see clearly now. I see things much more differently. Sorry, that's not enough. Find an expert, get into a safe place, and get help.